Good evening. Good evening and welcome to the Burbank Police Commission meeting for Wednesday, May 18th, 2022. Ms. Nakamura, could we have the roll call, please?
Chair Chapman?
Here?
Vice Chair Coombs?
Here.
Mr. Ellman?
Here.
Ms. Farouzen?
Here.
Mr. Hagobian?
Here.
And Ms. Liu and Ms. Turner are absent.
Okay. And for the flag salute, Mr. Ellman, would you like to lead us in the flag salute this evening? Thank you. Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Commissioner Ellman. Tonight, the things are a little bit different now that we're all here. The public comment period will be upcoming in a few minutes. For community members here in person, please complete a speaker's card and hand it to the staff, Ms. Nakamura. For members who wish to phone in their comments, please give a call to area code 818-238-3335. Callers will be placed in a queue and until all in-person comments have been received, and then the phone-ins will start. Commission announcements for this evening, reporting out by the commission subcommittees. And Mr. Commissioner Coombs, would you like to go first?
Thank you. We submitted for this evening a draft report that we're going to be reviewing for the evaluation of the commission. Also, just wanted to report out that is this the reporting out time as well on activities? Yes. Okay. Also, just wanted to report out that yesterday I was able to participate with the mental health evaluation team in a ride along yesterday afternoon. It went really well.
Excellent. And Commissioner Habakobian?
Thank you, Commissioner Chapman. Reporting out for some community activities. Yesterday, May 18th, I attended a ride-along with Sergeant Moroccan. I believe he's part of the gang unit, with my community friend Michael Thomas, and we had a really great conversation about the different gangs and took us to some certain areas where we actually saw some, gang members, and he was able to engage, and it was really wonderful seeing him, work with the gang members and building that rapport and just learning about that world. And the day before, on the 17th at 8 a.m., I went to the Muffins with Met event, which I think was fantastic. On the 14th of May, I attended the Boys and Girls Club annual gala. On the 7th of May at 9 a.m., I attended the Police and Fire Service Day. And on April 30th, I attended the Burbank Chamber Excellence Awards. And I'll also be reporting out that today I will be unfortunately leaving early due to graduating for the Leadership Burbank 2022 class. So I do apologize. I know I'm going to miss a lot of wonderful conversations, but just want to apologize in advance and thank you guys again.
Excellent, and congratulations on your graduation this evening. Do we have Commissioner Ellman?
Thank you. On 4/27, I attended Coffee with a Cop at the rear of the police station, and on 5/7 was Police and Fire Day, which I attended with Commissioner Combs and Commissioner Huckabee. Thank you.
Commissioner Farouzen?
Thank you. I also attended the Coffee with the Cop here at not here, across the street, at the police station earlier this month. It should be here. Earlier this month, I attended the Coffee with the Cop at the police headquarters as well, which was great. Just got a little bit of inside information about what was coming at the Police and Fire Day. That was a few days later, which I also attended with my family. And attended the Met Team community event as well at Miracle Bakery, which was great just to hear directly from the folks on the team, kind of how they ended up there and what that looked like and what they do every day. And besides that, just did, a little bit of prep and research in terms of our conversation tonight. And thank you to the three of you, I believe it was, for preparing that draft report.
Excellent. Is that everyone? All right. Two things. Commissioner Coombs and I were invited by Judy Wilkie in the city manager's office to attend a charter committee meeting along with the Chief Albanese. We had explained to him that we had opened up a discussion in our last meeting and that it was going to continue this evening. They thought that because of the timing involved, that it would be worthwhile to go ahead and meet. Commissioner Coombs and I expressed that we were speaking only for ourselves and were not representing the commission in any way. It was, I think, a useful meeting, and we can maybe discuss a little bit more about that later on in our agenda here. The other thing is that last night, I was delighted to see our city council honor our police department for, and I'm going to get it wrong, but it's National Police Week.
It is, and it's very important for the law enforcement community. And May 15th is National Police Day, and that is where we celebrate the lives of sworn officers that have died in the line of duty.
You mentioned last night that over the years, different officers have attended that from Burbank Police Department. Do we have any from this year?
We had 4 that attended, and typically, absent COVID, we have more than a handful. There's also some events, and it's called the Unity Bike Tour, and they leave from 3 different cities on the East Coast, and they all arrive in Washington, D.C. at the same time. It's pretty amazing to watch, and there's a ceremony. They ride their bikes around the memorial there. And we've had our folks do that in the past. Next year will be Matthew Pavelka's 20th anniversary when he was killed in the line of duty. So we anticipate folks participating in the Unity Bike Tour and also a greater representation during National Police Week.
Excellent, excellent. Sounds cool, too. Let's move on here to oral communications, and do we have any cards this evening? No cards and no phone calls. All righty. Thank you. That'll make comments a lot briefer this evening. Would you like to make a comment?
Yeah, sure. I'm requesting that we move some things around on the agenda this evening. I'd like to recommend that we move item 1 and 3 and join those together, and that we move item 2 to become item 1 on the agenda to allow the mental health evaluation team to make the presentation first.
All right, that sounds excellent. Could we, is there any discussion on that? Could we take a vote on that? Don't need to? Okay. Is everybody in agreement? Okay, all right, good, excellent. The approval from minutes from the April 20th meeting. Africa is not here this evening, but everybody got a copy of the minutes, and everybody approves? We need a motion here. Commissioner Ellman?
I move we approve the minutes of the meeting of April 20th, 2022.
Excellent. All right, do we have a second? Okay,
I second we approve the minutes from the April 2022 meeting.
Commissioner Frusen seconds it, and this we can do by hand raise? Or do we have to do it by a,
No, we're meeting in person, so you don't have to do individual roll call votes. You can do it by hand raise. But I want to make sure that the approval of the minutes have to be by 4. Are you abstaining, Commissioner Coombs?
No, I can approve. I wasn't at the meeting
Okay. But you've
itself,
reviewed
so,
it.
yeah.
Okay, great.
okay, we still have before, I think we can, yes, and yes, okay. Excellent, thank you. The minutes are approved. In our items of business, the second will become first, and we'll start off with a presentation, discussion, and recommendations, if any, of the mental health evaluation team, META, in a decade. And I'm not sure who's coming up, but would you give us your name and what you do?
Sorry. Good evening, Commissioners. Good evening, community. My name is Sonia Casanova. I am the licensed clinical social worker for the MET team here at Burbank.
Excellent.
Good evening, Commissioners. Good evening, community. I'm Officer Kyles, and I'm the officer for the mental health evaluation team. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Kelly Bravo Cuevas, and I am the administrative analyst assigned to the mental health evaluation team.
Perfect. Thank you. And who is going to speak first?
I will begin.
Go right ahead there.
Okay. Can I get the PowerPoint up, please? Okay, so we're going to start with, MET in a decade, a look at the evolution of Burbank's Police Department's mental health evaluation team. Where am I pointing this to? Okay. Okay, so the best way that we discussed about describing of who MET is by utilizing the 5 W's. Who is MET? What does MET do? Where does MET go? And why do we even have a mental health evaluation team? So the MET team is comprised of a police officer and a licensed clinical social worker from LA County Department of Mental Health. So what does MET do? MET's core responsibility falls into 3 listed categories: crisis intervention, case management support, and trainings. So crisis intervention. What does MET do when there is a crisis intervention? The MET team responds to calls for service where there is a mental health component. MET is thus utilized to evaluate individuals who are in crisis and determine the appropriate intervention to address their specific needs, utilizing all available resources. Case management support. One component of our case management support includes homeless outreach. The MET team works hand in hand with the city and community agencies to address the needs of unhoused individuals through a holistic and humane approach. Another facet of our case management includes linkage and referrals. MET provides resources and referrals to individuals, families, and community members alike. Examples include resources and linkage of minors in need of mental health services, seniors in need of individual support, veterans accessing VA benefits, and families that are having difficulties navigating the system and seeking mental health services for their loved one. Trainings. MET trainings include training for law enforcement personnel, city departments, school district personnel, and members of the community. Oops. Okay. MET also regularly participates in their own professional development to ensure that MET is abreast in the needs of the community. This includes trainings that address the needs of developmental disabilities, cultural awareness and diversity, suicide prevention, de-escalation techniques, crisis negotiation, and professional best practices. Where does MET go? MET is prepared to respond to a plethora of environments, from freeway underpass encampments, schools, homes, and professional businesses. Wherever there is a need for a mental health intervention, we will respond. When does MET respond? So MET is available. We are here Tuesday through Friday, 10 to 8. And we also do follow-ups in regards to when there's, mental health interventions. We get a lot of referrals from our department personnel. Okay, so I'm going to pass it on to Kelly.
Thank you. Sorry. So as far as to the why, in 2012, the Burbank Police Department found themselves with a significant increase in mental health-related calls for service and interventions. The Burbank Police Department collaborated with the Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health to provide an appropriate response modeled to those experiencing mental illness. And as a result, the Burbank Police Department became one of the first municipal cities in the greater Los Angeles area or region to implement a mental health evaluation team. And just to give you a quick insight into my role, a quick insight is I collect, maintain, and analyze data regarding our department's psychiatric holds, as well as our own outreach contacts and activities. I work closely with the MET officer and licensed clinical social worker to coordinate our case management and follow-up efforts. So I review the department's mental health holds to identify people who could benefit from our services. I also look for information that stands out, such as if a minor was placed on a hold, taken to the hospital, or a person has been taken to the hospital more than twice a year. As well, if there was an active suicide attempt, or if the person that that PD or us placed on a hold and they have registered firearms. A look into the data entry and extraction that I do. Looking at the mental health holds, I look at the subject demographics, such as age range and residence. As for calls for service, if you want to look on the screen, I collect days of the week of the days that the holds take place, the time of the day, and as well as duration of call time. So if you look on the screen, you can see as of last year, the Tuesday was the highest day as far as holds being taken place. But the year prior, it was not. It was actually one of the lowest, but Monday in 2020 was considered the highest. So these are the kinds of things that I look for as far as mental health trends. In regards to our own MET contacts, I also collect subject demographics. I also capture our daily activity. And if you want to look on the far right, it's going to be, that's a majority of, there's a lot of different things within our activities, such as appointments, calls we respond to, consultations and follow-ups with family, friends, and between city departments, the referrals that we receive from the community, police, or the fire department, and homeless outreach contacts. As you can see, the calls for service, they're only a fraction of what our duties consist of. Primarily, we do a lot of follow-ups, consultations, and those can take place, within the field, over the phone, could be conducted at the front counter. And we also do contacts within the jail. So and for the purpose, this data does not only track mental health trends, but it highlights the needs of the community. And just to give you a brief overview, since 2018, MET has captured just under 4,000 contacts within the community. We responded to over 900 mental health related situations and conducted over 600 mental health evaluations. We received over 650 referrals from members of the community and police department personnel, as well as over 1,800 case management follow-ups and consultations with individuals, family members, and care providers. As well, we've conducted over 1,100 outreach contacts with unhoused individuals.
And that's the end of our presentation.
You can contact us at the listed numbers above.
Good, thank you. And I think that we have some questions from our commissioners, if you're willing.
Yes.
Commissioner Coombs?
Sure, I can start it. Thank you. First off, thank you all for being here, and thank you for the opportunity to go with you out with you yesterday. It was an honor to be able to do that. I understand that a lot of the issues that you deal with are very sensitive in nature, so their privacy is a big issue. So I really appreciate having the opportunity to be able to go out, and I'm going to do my best to make sure I don't talk about any specific case-related issues. So first, I was wondering, and actually, Officer Kiles, if you wouldn't mind starting with this, if it's okay. One of the things that makes your team effective is the relationships that you establish in the community. It's not just responding to calls. It's not just logging the status of your calls, but actually going out and developing relationships in the community. I'm wondering actually if you and if the team wants to talk a little bit about the nature of those relationships and why those relationships are important.
Yeah, so basically, when we talk about like relationships, we build relationships in multiple kind of ways. So sometimes dispatch will get calls and it will be somebody who will continuously call. It won't necessarily be like an emergency situation where police need to come out, but they still need some type of assistance. So we will reach out to that person and basically help them with their situation. Some of them could be phone services, helping them find a loved one, helping them find like food or any other type of resources. So once we are able to connect them to those resources, a lot of times they will continue to call us and tell us how things are going. And if something is going wrong, then we can either call them to figure out what's going on. We can go out to them and just like continue to outreach. A lot of times after we're done with the call, some of the community members will just call just to basically have like a mini therapy session and just like keep them on track and make sure that they don't have to call the police. And that's one way where they feel comfortable working with us. You want to add anything?
I wonder if you want to address the relationships between businesses, community members, social service agencies in the community, and the importance of that network as well to collectively, for example, one of the calls that we had out yesterday involved a community agency, and how those relationships play into the work that you do.
Okay. So we work a lot with the libraries. For today, for example, today, they call us if it's not an emergency situation, but they feel like someone needs help, they know that they can directly call us, and we'll go out there and respond to see what kind of services we can provide. A lot of times, like Park and Rec, they'll call us if there's an individual who may need like housing assistance, and they'll call us and Street Plus. So we work closely with Street Plus, who is like homeless outreach, and if someone needs housing services, we'll go out and evaluate to make sure that, if they do need mental health services, that we can provide that as well. And then Street Plus will provide the housing resources. A lot of times Street Plus, to get into housing, you'll need IDs. And so we're able to provide them with free housing vouchers as well. And so a lot of businesses know that if there is an unhoused individual or if there's someone experiencing a mental health crisis, that they can call us and we'll come out there.
Great. Your hours right now are Tuesday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. And I know that Ms. Bravo Cuevas was sharing the data through 7 days a week. The quick question, for the data that you shared, was that calls throughout the week or just during the hours of operation for the MET team?
For the data that also includes MET holds.
Right.
It's just the whole department.
The whole department-wide.
including MET's holds.
So it's got to be tough then, because there's a lot of there's calls for service outside of the time you're available, and you're doing a lot of case management work when you come in and follow-up work. How does one team cover the entire week by themselves? How does that work, or how doesn't that work for you?
A lot of times the officers will call me off duty to see if I can provide them with additional information. Sometimes it's just finding what hospital they're able to go to, or if we've dealt with someone, what's the best place to take them. So a lot of times it's just if they need help, they'll call.
They also, if it's not a crisis, they'll send us a patrol referral, send us an email, name, contact information. We'll do some follow-up. We've done our best with the hours that we're here, try to, utilize our time as best as we can in addressing not only what Met contacts, but also PD's contacts as well.
Some of the data that you shared is, oh, Chief?
So I believe I understand where you're going with your question, and we have been approved for a second Met team. So it's a matter of getting a DMH to support an additional Met team. We've had a special vehicle ordered for over a year, and this is a setback due to COVID. And the goal, the organizational goal, and I don't want to take any thunder away from them, is to have at least a 6-day deployment, possibly a 7-day deployment, and that is the what we're going to try to achieve. But it also requires the partnership with DMH, and that means that someone's going to work a weekend, and we have to navigate that. So the conceptual discussion with our team now and for the future, we've had those. So as soon as our vehicle comes in and DMH supports what we're going to do moving forward, we are ready to move forward with that.
That's fantastic. And I appreciate you trying to set limits with your off time, but also appreciate the fact that you're willing to pitch in and help others out throughout the week. I want to take this one step further, and then I want to hand it off to my colleagues here, is one of the calls that we went on was not necessarily, it was almost like a welfare check of sorts that might have actually been better handled by another type of a social service team. Mm-hmm. And so this kind of goes outside of the work of the police department and the police commission, but you're clearly carrying enough cases, enough calls for service to warrant additional teams, and it's great to hear that there's going to be an expansion of teams down the road. I'm wondering, would there be a benefit to an expansion of other social service resources that you could partner with in Burbank, so that way you didn't have to handle some of these social service calls that aren't necessarily law enforcement related, other than the welfare check? Mm-hmm. I'm wondering what types of calls might you periodically get called out on that that don't necessarily warrant a law enforcement call, but there's simply no other agency to respond to it?
Like you said, we get a lot of calls dealing with the elder population, and a lot of it is someone may be on may have dementia, and so we're trying to figure out like how we can help this individual. But again, it's not a police concern, so those we respond to those type of calls a lot. So that would actually help a lot if we could have outside sources for that. And I think right now what we've been dealing with a lot is there are unhoused individuals who need help with applying for like Medi-Cal, Medicare, EDD, food stamps, and we have also helped, fill out those applications just because those individuals have gotten to the point where they did become aggressive and they were threatening people because, they weren't eating. And so we just figured it would solve the problem if we just helped them. So we've gotten a few of those calls. And then dealing with children, sometimes we're responding to calls where children are upset because of parenting, phones taken away. And so police respond to that. And a lot of times it's just advisals. We can suggest family therapy, we can suggest all of that stuff, but if we had outside sources to kind of help with that situation, because sometimes the families are upset, like, why were the police called? And, this is the only option that they had available for them.
Thank you. I'm going to pass it off to my colleagues.
Commissioner Coombs was mentioning about your coverage, and the chief mentioned that we're expanding the team. Do we partner with other communities or the county or Los Angeles for services for off times for your group?
Yeah, so if families are experiencing a crisis situation, we will provide them the PMRT number, the Psychiatric Mobile Response Team. That's with the County of LA with the Department of Mental Health. And so they're a two-man team like us, but with 2 social workers. So we also provide that option if they don't want police response. They're 24 hours. The response time is a little bit later, but we do like to offer that suggestion just in case we're not available.
I may be a little bit surprised when I heard, it sounds like most of the calls that you receive are not related specifically to any criminal activity. Is that correct?
Yeah, for the most part. There are some sensitive situations where someone who is experiencing a mental health crisis, where, they may get a little violent, or they may be damaging stuff. And so we try to draw the fine line between like when should they be arrested and when should they be taken to the mental health hospital. So it kind of just depends on the situation. We try to help the family as best as we can. And sometimes criminal is what works best for the family, but we try to avoid that before we help them.
And so how does that work out when, who takes the lead? If there's criminal activity, then it would be a different group of people rather than the meta group, right?
No. So for calls that are considered crisis and that may be like kind of dangerous, we send multiple units, but we're also there to respond. So if the individual it does become a criminal matter, I will still usually write the report depending on the situation, and then we still help like navigate what happens. So if it's an elder abusive situation, then I still write the report for that. Like batteries and stuff, where somebody's like assaulted or hit, I can still write reports for that. But we usually stick to mostly mental health stuff. But I can do criminal stuff still.
We have for a number of years, many years, have had police chaplains, representatives from the community of different faiths, a rabbi, a minister, whatever, who participated in some crisis issues for families, say like the loss of a family member or something. Is the chaplains group still active, and do they work with you, or?
Yes. So we there's a couple of situations. So when we were providing homeless outreach, there are some individuals who had a strong belief in their faith. So we reached out to the chaplains, and the chaplains said that they would help locate this individual and see what kind of services they can provide. And then also as well, when we have had community members lose a loved one, they're contacted and see if they can come out to the scene to help the families.
And I think one more question is, I believe that there's some laws, state laws that are changing that affect the ability to hold a person who has some issues going on for like, I think 72 hours now. Could you maybe expand on that a little bit?
So basically, when someone is placed on a 5150 hold, we'd like to tell the families that it's just an application for a possibility of a 72-hour hold. We are just transporting them to the hospital, and then it's up to the hospital to determine whether or not they actually meet that criteria. So once the doctor evaluates them, sometimes they can be released right then and there. And then if they feel like they do need to be on a hold, then they will keep them. And then each day they're continuing to evaluate them to see how long they need to be on the hold. There are a lot of people experiencing mental health crises right now, so there's a lot of shortages on beds. So it's kind of, it's up to the doctors to determine like how much of a person is in crisis?
Triage. Huh?
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. It's fantastic that our department is, and our city is so enthused about this group and expanding on its capabilities. I'm just delighted. Commissioner Fruzen?
Thank you. Thank you again for coming out, and nice to see you again. Or saw you earlier this week. So my question relates to what you had just, I think, spoken to, Officer Kyles, actually, is, are there any barriers to making the referrals that you all have, aside from, perhaps the receptiveness of the individual involved, but in terms of, the capacity of services, shortage of services, or the location of them, or, the languages the services are offered in are not a good match for, our community residents or anything like that. Kind of what are the barriers that you come up against in those service referrals?
I would say that some of the barriers, especially in dealing with the unhoused population, would be something as simple as a cell phone. And so trying to access those services is, what I guess was termed once like the Obama phones. And so the free services through DPSS. And so since, they're transient, they're moving around the community, if we're trying to get them linked to services and it's not going to happen right then and there, how do we get in contact with them? And so something as simple as that. Officer Kyles also discussed the identification as well. A lot of places are going to need ID. And so having some kind of case management support, something local within the city that can address those issues would be helpful.
And I think a lot of the concerns for the families is the wait time. We'll ask them, are they linked up to services? And a lot of them will say it'll take months before they can get the next appointment. And so we tried to help fast track them to some services, but even then, it could still be weeks before something actually happens for them. And a lot of families need something to happen right now. So I think that's the main concern for the communities.
So in between that time, when they're linked, they have the option to give us a call as well. We can always come out, intervene, provide support via phone or as an in-person visit as well.
Excuse me. Overall, we have our local services, and we partner with different facilities in the area. The bigger picture over the state, is the state responsible for mental health? Is there funding that comes from the state for this, or is this done only locally?
There is funding for this. It's just probably where is all the funding going? Where can we put some, and where special places? But the state is involved. The state understands that there are concerns within the communities. I think it's just trying to figure out how to navigate the system again. So.
And I would say through Department of Mental Health, we do receive funding that comes from the state in the sense to address those outreach and engagement situations.
And if I may,
Commissioner Coombs?
Yeah, I have a comment and a question. Commissioner Feruzin brought it up a moment ago about who we're serving in the community and their role and place in the community, which I appreciate you bringing up. I'm wondering, I can actually turn this question to Ms. Casanova. One of the things that happens sometimes, and I definitely know it happens here in Burbank sometimes, is there's a sense of us and them. And something that I'd like to emphasize with some of the data that your team has pulled together and everything is the majority of calls that you go out on are residential calls, I believe. So those are residents in Burbank, and I'm wondering if you can touch bases on the us versus them piece. And the importance of providing these services here in the community to our residents. It's not an outside group or anything like that that's coming in that we need to provide these services to, but the importance of really focusing on the needs of this community, especially with May is Mental Health Month, with 1 in 4 people needing mental health services at one point in their life, that type of thing. Would you mind addressing that?
Yes, I would say that there is a need for more mental health services. Within the community, there is, resources, but then there is resources and referrals that are also provided outside of the community as well, just to ensure and address the needs here. So.
Thank you.
Commissioner Elman?
Thank you. What is the size of the existing team? And the existing team is made up of how many sworn officers?
This is the team.
Then my next question is, I bet you do take a day off or a vacation day. It must happen occasionally. Do you have somebody to back you up?
Yeah, so while I'm at work, my team does a good job of supporting me, and I think we support each other very well. After each call, we decompress, we talk about what's going on, and then when we go home, we enjoy our families. We basically enjoy our families, and we try to have fun, and then when we come back to work, we start over again.
And my other question is, on an initial encounter, determining if it's a mental health issue or a substance abuse issue.
So for most individuals that we do come into contact with while we're talking to them, we do ask if there is a substance abuse or if they're using substances, and we just like to tell them that we do ask everyone these questions just so we can kind of see like what type of referral we may need to provide, and like where the mental health concern is coming from.
And how do you handle a situation where you're with the family and the family says the person has an issue and they've gone off their medication?
So we will talk to the family, we will evaluate the individual, and we will explain whether or not they meet the criteria. A lot of families do get upset, but we like to tell them that this isn't a one-time thing. They may not meet the criteria right now, but we can continue coming out and we can continue working with them until we can find a solution.
And also, we've been working with NAMI and NAMI Glendale, which is National Alliance of Mental Illness, that provides support for families as well. And so that is a resource that we also provide to the families as well.
Thank you.
Got Ms. Casanova, just real briefly, how common is it for there to be what's called a comorbid or co-occurring disorder where there's a substance use issue and a mental health issue?
I would say it's pretty common. So we're going to address it as is. And so as a mental health crisis, we're going to address it. We don't discriminate if, someone said that they, just got high on something. We're going to address it as it is, as fit to address, hopefully, we can help them, put them in a better situation.
Thank you.
Commissioner Fruzen?
So kind of related to that line of question, so I'm wondering, the calls that you're responding to, or a lot of the stories that you've mentioned are kind of like a family member who's concerned or who might feel maybe in danger, is calling, or that their loved one is in danger relating to mental health or substance use. And I'm wondering, in cases where substance use is related to actual criminal activity, and that could be something like a theft, a car break-in or things like that, or, stealing a purse or something. Are you all usually called on those occasions or involved in those incidents? And is that kind of approached with the same sort of referral and kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Diversion, versus, for folks where there's substance use disorders involved and potentially mental health, as you mentioned.
Those are case-by-case situations. So if it comes out as a theft call, patrol will usually respond first. Mm-hmm. And then based on their engagement, they'll determine whether or not we need to come out. And so we've gotten a lot of those calls where patrol knows that there's something else that's going on, so they'll request for MET. Mm-hmm. If the family is like adamant for them to, be arrested for that situation, patrol will arrest them, and then they will give us the heads up that, hey, can you guys go evaluate him in the jail? And then once we go to the jail, we'll kind of figure out what needs to happen from there.
And if there is a mental health component to that, we also work with, there's a Department of Mental Health court liaison that she works, she covers the courthouse here in Burbank. And so if they're someone with a mental health condition that is in the legal system, we outreach to her to help, also intervene on that side as well.
This is something that I don't know if maybe Chief Albanese would like to mention. In your role, you're receiving calls that I believe that in history past that our police officers were going out and didn't have the training that you have. Has that changed the number of calls that you get, relieve some of the pressure on our regular police?
Can I jump in on that?
Yes, sir.
So when we began the program in 2012, we recognized that we were seeing an inordinate number of involuntary holds. When our Met team talks about a 5150, that's the 5150 of the Welfare and Institution Code, and that's an involuntary hold. And we saw a spike, and I had a conversation with number 2 at DMH and asked, is this unique to the region, or is Burbank experiencing something that the rest is not? And it was a region-wide. There was a 19% bump in 2010, 11, and 12, about an average. And that's when we had the conversation about putting the co-response model Met team. So a clinician, Sonia, and a sworn officer. But what came with that was training, and there was an additional collaboration with the DA's office to train Southern California law enforcement and put them through 8, 16, 24 hours of mental health specific training to recognize the symptomology, how to manage, how to intervene so that we could mitigate the number of force incidents. So our Met team ended up taking the lead on that training with the DA's office. So in addition to that, and these folks aren't going to tell you this, in addition to their case management and interventions, they also provide training throughout the city. They provide additional training and ongoing training for our police officers. So we provided training at the library, Water and Power, city manager's office for folks that are city employees, so they can recognize folks that may have some type, recognize the symptomology or someone who's having an episode, how to manage that, when to notify the police. In addition to that, and I'm very proud of our program, and these folks do a great job. There's a lot of humility here. They just work very hard. There's no bravado or puffery. And they've been recognized not only in the state of California, in LA County, but also NAMI. They received a NAMI award. So these are the folks that do the heavy lifting, and that's one of the reasons why we want to expand the team, and actually we got budget approval to expand the team. And the other, and I'm afraid to say it, but out of all the encounters that they've had, they have not had one use of force, which is remarkable. So that's just a kiss of death for them right now. But it speaks to the work. They understand what their mission is and how to manage these really difficult and complex cases. Then you go to community expectation. This is the city of Burbank. The community has exceptional expectations or high expectations of their police department to have these extraordinary services, these personalized services. And we have delivered those services. Not perfect, but we're trying to kiss perfection. So these folks, high marks. Part of what we're celebrating here is this is Met May, but this is the 10th anniversary of our Met team. So this is a big deal for them, for us, and very proud of them. So, and also the Met supervisor who's hiding back there is also part of our team. So when you talk about resources, and Commissioner Coombs and Commissioner Chapman are concerned about the off hours, we're challenged off hours. We recognize that, but there are other resources. Phone calls are made, and there are other resources that can be that we can refer our folks to manage these extraordinary cases. And if we have to, we call people in. Once we get a second Met team, I believe the coverage and the service will be even better.
Thank you, Chief. Commissioner Ellman?
I just want to correct the chief. He forgot to mention the incredible work that you did to create this team back in 2012. If it wasn't for his work, this team maybe wouldn't be here.
Well, thank you for that. But it was all about relationships and support. Because when the conceptual model was pitched to City Council, we weren't sure where they were going to go, and we got a 5-0 vote. So that's what energized the process, and Commissioner Coombs will know this name. Dr. Tony Believes was my counterpart at the time, and we had worked together in my former agency, and it was a phone call and a handshake. We had the support of the city council, and then we were off and running. In the first couple of years, we kind of we were in the toddler stage, and now we're in the high performance stage. So, but thank you, Commissioner.
If I just may add briefly, and thank you guys for staying late and everything too, because I realize that this is actually.
Overtime for me. Don't worry.
Okay, there are two other agencies in the region that have significant teams with numbers of teams of law enforcement mental health professionals working together, but those teams, the numbers of those teams, sometimes there's a certain amount of clout about the number of teams that they have, but those teams developed out of liability. The numbers of teams often developed out of lawsuits. So one of the things that I really appreciate here is that the team was implemented and you're looking to expand the team as a proactive resource for the community as opposed to being lawsuit driven and costing actually a lot more as a result of doing that. So I really commend the department for doing that.
Good. We very much appreciate your coming and giving a presentation this evening. Thank you very much for your services to the community. And thank you, Chief Albanese, for your vision in fostering this program.
Thank you. Well done, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. So that's number 2. So I guess we're ready for our presentation, discussion, and recommendations of the report prepared by the Self-Evaluation Subcommittee. And I believe you're the committee tonight.
I would be happy to run forward with that. So if you take a look at the attachment that was sent out to the agenda, there's a draft report that's written there, and I'm just going to take you briefly through it because I'd really like to spend the time focusing on the discussion about it and seeing if we're on target, what things we can do differently. The first piece, and this is where Chair Chapman, this is where we wanted to merge items 1 and 3 together in the discussion. So we'll be talking about the charter in addition to the self-evaluation. So the first piece of the self-evaluation includes the charter for the police commission. So it identifies the rules, the structure, the expectations there, what our role is, and that is something that was part of the discussion that was held by the charter commission last week. So if we jump down to evaluation elements, that's really where it starts, and hopefully everybody's got a copy of that. That's really where it starts as far as the evaluation of what we've been doing these past 9 months. So going through it, we were oriented, we were guided. Thank you, Ms. O, for guiding us and helping us newbies understand what the heck we're allowed to do and not do. And specifically, lifting up the importance of the gravity of agendizing items. I think that's where a lot of the power of the commission sits, is because we can choose to talk about specific things and bring those to the table. I honestly think that's where our power sits. So you'll see a list of, in addition to learning how to make motions, you'll see a list of the items that we've agendized, which is pretty extensive, kind of impressive in terms of what we've asked to cover. So I think we've taken advantage of the strategy of agendizing items. I was looking at, in looking at our assigned tasks and responsibilities, I think part of the discussion we'll want to have is there's 5 items there that come from the charter as to are we doing what we're supposed to be doing? So we're covering a lot of ground, but the question is, are we doing what we're supposed to be doing? And then we've also identified, as we move further down in the document, the interests of the commission. So there's a number of things that we have focused on as a commission and have done some committee work outside of the commission, which kind of, there's what we agendized, and then there's what we kind of put our energy into. And I think it's important to distinguish those two. And then the last piece I have in areas for growth, and then I have a recommendations piece at the end. So with that, I want to turn it back over to you and open it up for discussion with the commission.
Excellent. Did everybody get a copy? Did you receive a copy and be able to review it before? One thing that I'd like to mention at our meeting with the Charter Committee is that they reaffirmed that the possibilities for our commission can grow or be reduced, and it is not really a decision that would be made by the charter committee. The charter committee looked at it and said, and the city attorney was there as well, and said, it's wide open. It's just dependent on what the council members would like to direct us to do. So it's not really an issue with the charter committee at all, if we had any questions about that. Did you want to?
Yeah, I actually want to ask, this is a process point, and this is a question for Ms. O. When we're having a discussion like this, do members of the commission need to be called on, or can we just have an open discussion and dialogue?
It's really up to the commission. Obviously, if the conversation is such that people are trying to talk over each other, then you need to establish rules and protocols on the chair calling people to order and when they can speak. It's like directing traffic. In this particular case, I think our commissioners, I don't think we've ever had an issue of people trying to talk over each other or not allowing other commissioners to voice their opinions. So it would probably be a more free-flowing discussion if you just allow yourselves to speak as you normally would.
Perfect, and that would be my preference as well, but you're in charge and you've got the gavel, and you can swing it if you need to.
We
so.
are open. Does anybody have any comments that they'd like to ask about this, or?
A question I'll bring up to the
Sure.
commission is that I know that there's, and this, by the way, is separate from item number 4 on the agenda. Number 4 on the agenda is specifically about attendance at the NACOL conference this coming September. But there are elements related to NACOL that we do want to talk about in this discussion. The NACOL is the organization that it's not a governing body, but an educational body that provides orientation and insight into police oversight. And the word oversight, I think, is probably one of the biggest questions that's come up that I know I've become aware of in terms of, are we an advisory body versus an oversight body? And I know that there has been some push for us to have more oversight, but the question for the commission is really oversight over what? And what authorities do we need that we don't have right now to be able to have discussions with the public and with the department itself?
Just to make one point clear with Nicole, it's not police oversight, it's civilian oversight.
Thank you. So with civilian oversight, we are not an oversight body, we're an advisory body. But there's been a call to have more oversight, civilian oversight of the police department. And the justification in some ways has come because the city pays for and arranges for us to be able to attend the NACOL conferences. So the question is to the commission, are we seeking more oversight as opposed to advisory and using the power of the agenda or the motion in the agenda, or is there something else that we're looking for?
Mr. Elman, you attended the Nicole.
Well, there are so many different flavors of police commissions, police review boards. They go by many different titles. They try to do things many different ways. When you go to Nicole, and I hope you guys do go, you will see police commissions with their own attorneys, with their own investigators, with their own staff. Those are in the largest cities. That we can't do that here in Burbank. And and it runs the whole gamut to just maybe an organization like ourselves, which are appointed by the council. We are an advisory group to the council, but you will see one of the things is there are people there from all over the world, from different cities, and there's all different ways of doing things. And again, I have to stress, you guys have to go, because you really can't say what's the direction that we should be following, because there's so many different directions that we could follow. But I think that, you know, there's no way in the world, my feeling is we should ask for a staff or anything like that. That's beyond just too far.
From your experience, were there any community sending representatives that were not an oversight committee or commission?
There were, like I said, all different manners that a civilian, a resident can go to a police commission, file a complaint, and it will not go to the police department. It will go to their own legal staff and their own investigators. And it was kind of modeled, in my mind, the district attorney has their own investigative staff, which is separate from a police department. And it was almost like another agency of kind of very close to a district attorney's staff. But there's so many different ways of doing it, and it's what do we want? How do we think? I think we got to talk about goals, which is part of the thing. Is if you're going to set a goal, you have to have a process to attain that goal. You can't just say I want this, and you got to see what's doable. But I would say that it's. I guess I said enough already.
I know that our attorney, for years, every year, has reaffirmed that we are not an oversight committee or commission, but it seems a little awkward when we are participating in an oversight association. I'm not sure if those are going two different directions.
One thing I learned at Nicole, which was every single police commission that was created was the result of an incident. Something happened. And I just, it's, you hear some horrible stories at the Nicole conference about things that have happened. But I think, we're in a different chair here than there. I mean, we only have to look across the border to the LA Police Commission. And I don't know if that's a model or a direction that we want to go.
So I'm glad you brought that up. The history of this commission, I believe it started in the 50s, and it was related to, there was corruption going on. And I believe was it a former or retired FBI agent that was chairing the commission when it was first brought together? Does anybody know that history off the top of their head? We were provided it in our orientation a little bit. So the question is has this body ever had oversight authority, subpoena powers, investigative powers, or anything like that? I'm not aware that it has. So looking again at what we've agendized and addressed just in the last 9 months, do we need those powers? So I understand that the NACOL is designed for civilian to train on civilian oversight. So it sounds like the question may be is by participating in NACOL, are we implicitly being told that we're supposed to have oversight, or is this just an opportunity to kind of orient to police accountability structures? And then that's something that we have to decide for ourselves. What level of oversight do we want? And I think you're right, Commissioner Ellman, is that we need to identify what our goals are. We've accomplished a lot, but we haven't necessarily laid out specific goals as we kind of wander our way through this process. So that's the question that I have for the committee. Yes.
So I'm just going to jump into your conversation, if that's okay with you. I have been sitting in this chair for many years with many different commissions. So if it's okay, I'd like to share some thoughts that perhaps might aid in your discussion. So to answer your question, Commissioner Coombs, as to why the city has decided to send people or our commissioners to NACOL, it's really educational, right? So as Commissioner Ellman says, NACOL is the one time, one place where many different iterations of police commissions, police boards come together to share their thoughts about how civilians can provide better oversight. And I don't want to get too hung up on the word oversight. I don't believe there is any, well, in all the discussions that we had in finding money to send our commissioners to this conference, it's always been a discussion about providing education. Most of you come to our commission without any police background, without any specialized training in police science or oversight, and I'm going to put that in quotes. And so it's an opportunity for you to go and learn. As Commissioner Ellman has indicated, he learned a lot by attending at least once, and so we want to make this opportunity available. There's never been any discussion that I have certainly been part of, either by council members or the police department, to grant oversight powers to this commission. And there's a few different reasons for that. The first thing that I'd like you to think about in your discussion is there an issue or a problem that we are actually searching for a solution, that you feel you need additional powers? Because frankly, the powers that you are embodied with in the charter and the code are quite broad, right? You actually have a lot of power, and there's a catch-all provision within the charter and the code that the city council can also vote to give you additional powers, which is why when you went to the charter review committee, the charter review committee felt like there's no need to change the charter because you actually have a lot of power. The one thing that you don't have access to, as I sit here and over the years have observed, is investigations and personnel issues. And there's a lot of reasons for that, right? There are MOUs, there's codes, right? State codes, and our charter and our BMC itself that don't allow you to have access to that type of information. And there's never been any discussion about changing that, again, because of all the different hurdles that we would have to jump over in order to give you that power. But again, the underlying question is always, is there a problem that we're actually in search of solving, right? The one thing I would like to point out, and I don't know if you noticed it in the agenda for tonight, is that we have actually changed the wording. And moving forward, I want to make sure that we continue to change the wording of how your agenda is written. And what I mean by that is that we've been very specific to write in presentation, discussion, and recommendations, if any, by this commission after hearing a report, after getting feedback, right? And the reason why we want to change this language moving forward is, again, I don't want something not being agendized to the requirements of the Brown Act to prevent you from exercising your full ability within the charter and the code to discuss things and make recommendations. Now, I want to be very clear. Your recommendation, unlike the City of Los Angeles Police Commission, your recommendations are not mandates to the police department, to the police chief, right? Because you are an advisory board. But to the extent that you have recommendations, I believe it would be very helpful for all of us sitting here who participate in these police commission meetings to hear your point of view, and then it's up to the chief to decide what makes sense to maybe follow in the recommendations or not, or certainly to explore things as you bring them up. So, I think that's a positive change moving forward, and while it's not an expansion of your powers, it does specifically call out that you have these powers. The other thing I wanted to mention, again, historically, is that a lot of commissioners bring up the fact that they feel like they're just rubber stamping studies or reports that the police department staff bring forward to you. And in many cases, historically, that's exactly what it is. But there's a reason for that. And that is because the commissioners themselves did not go out and find information on their own to possibly counter what the police department is telling you. So in past meetings, what would happen is that the police commission would vote to have the police department come forth and, present a report on the use of tasers. Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Is the use of body-worn cameras, is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? But the commissioners themselves have no independent knowledge. So when the staff presents the reports, sometimes there are no questions, or their questions are very surface level and they're not very probative of whatever the presentation is about. And they can't be because there's no independent knowledge to challenge anything that staff tells you in a presentation. So, of course, you're going to feel like you're rubber stamping whatever staff tells you because you have no ability to question or challenge what they say. So, again, as part of the discussion about your roles and the powers that you have a lot of power. It's whether or not you are exercising that power. And I think, I will say, in my opinion, many commissions in the past did not exercise their powers. And so you feel like, what are we doing here? You feel impotent. You don't feel like you're making a difference. But until commissioners are really willing to put in the time and the energy to educate yourselves, and part of that is attending conferences such as NACO, which the city will pay for, how will you ever actually provide meaningful input to the police department, let alone provide oversight of anything? So these are just some thoughts. I apologize if I've overstepped, but I really think it's important for you to have these points to discuss as you are discussing this agenda item, so that we're not having this conversation a year from now, and the next year, and the next year.
And if I can add on to Gina, is that the other thing is that this commission has accomplished more than other commissions in years past. And many times we don't recognize when we have progress or have achieved things. And I'll give you a couple examples. The campaign that we collaborated on, when I say the commission collaborated on, the street racing. Think about that. That was digital. It went through mailers. Never have we had that before. And that started with the police commission. They collaborated with the traffic bureau. That was huge. That was huge. So recognize that. And there's one other collaboration. There's collaboration in the mix with West Coast Customs. And again, hadn't been done before in the past. And Michael, the two Michaels will remember that. Commissioner Coombs and I talked about the accomplishments so far, and you were impaneled when? August?
Last summer, yeah.
August?
Yeah.
So when you do the math, with a holiday COVID, that's some pretty high marks. One of the things that I would encourage you to think about is a 5150 involuntary hold. This is something that this panel has some knowledge of, and I think recognizes that is a statute that could be expanded for folks that are resistant to services that are just close to needing mandatory services that could impact the entire state of California. Okay, no one's having that conversation, but this group is having that conversation. So think that way moving forward, and big things are going to happen, I believe. So that's from my speech, and I've been in the business a long time. That's why I look as old as I do. And I'm telling you, this is an opportunity, and there's good momentum, and I would encourage you with momentum. And so I'm dovetailing on City Attorney O, because she knocked it out of the park as far as defining what you're at, what you can do, the educational component to Nicole, and just keep the momentum going.
Thank you, Chief. Commissioner Ellman?
I just want to talk a little bit about of my own little frustration. I want to read from the charter. This is section 705, subsection 4. to receive complaints except those relating to traffic engineering pertaining to the police department and law enforcement in general. Now, that says we have the ability to receive complaints, but I have never heard of any process we have to do after we got the complaint.
Oh, is your microphone on?
Okay. Anyways, I just read from the Section 705 of the Charter, which says that we, the commission, have the ability to receive complaints. But I believe in the past, and I think even today, what is the process after we hear the complaint? That's where I think we have a weakness, is in process. Thank you.
So it seems like, as far as receiving complaints, the two avenues that I'm aware of are either through public comment or through email, because that's available, and we do receive those, and we do receive those periodically. As far as responding to complaints, it seems like the process that we need to use, that we've kind of gotten ourselves educated on, is agendizing the issue. So we collectively have to agree, in essence, that this is a complaint worth receiving, and then we can agendize it, prepare for it, talk about it, and we'll have some opportunity to do some our own background research and education on the issue before we talk about it as a commission. So those seem adequate to me, but maybe there's more that we need.
So, please chime in.
So if you read number 4, it also says pertaining to police department and law enforcement in general. So to answer Commissioner Ellman's, well, it really wasn't a question, his concern is it depends on the nature of the complaint. So in the past, it doesn't happen a lot, but we have had people come and complain about an individual encounter with a police officer. And so if the complaint relates to alleged misconduct by that police officer in their interaction with the citizen, well, that may potentially be a discipline, right? It's going to take a disciplinary route, and that's not something that you would be able to agendize and discuss. But if the complaint is regarding a larger policy issue, maybe from that complaint about the officer, you can identify a more generalized law enforcement issue, maybe the practice of how the police department interacts with all incidents of that nature, for example, where you're not talking about any individual, which you can't, but you're talking about maybe a policy, which you've identified from that complaint. Well, that is something that you absolutely could agendize to have a discussion, and again, educate yourselves so that you could provide recommendations if there are any, right? And I added that if any because I don't want people to feel burdened like you always have to, but it gives you the opportunity if you want to, right?
I can provide a specific example of something that's come up just a few months ago. Is there were some general community concerns about issues related to domestic violence. And so we agendized the issue, and we had a fairly comprehensive presentation from the department on domestic violence. And I believe we subsequently had a conversation and an interaction with the department around safety issues, around appropriate call-outs, around appropriate responses, around adequate versus inadequate resources in the community. So we might not have necessarily addressed a specific individual complaint in that instance, but we were able to address the issue that it was brought up from the community, brought to our attention indirectly in that way.
And if I can add to that, as a result of that discussion, there was additional training provided to our police officers regarding encounters involving domestic violence. So maybe we can work on a better way to make sure that information comes back full circle so that you can see the results of the actions that you take here and the discussions you're having here. But there are actions that happen as a result of what happens here. So I don't want people to feel like nothing's happening. There are some times when it's appropriate, things that the police department does in reaction to what becomes uncovered at a police commission meeting.
At one time, we briefly received, and I believe it was on a monthly basis, a report of complaints, and it wasn't specific with the officer's name or the complainer's name or anything like that. But we got to know the number of complaints that were coming in, and then in the next column, it was resolved and how it was resolved, or a brief overview of it. And we have not been receiving that, I think, on this this commission. I don't think we've received it once before, but last year we did. And it just went for a couple months and then it kind of dropped off. But at least we had some inkling as to the number of complaints that might be received by our department. It may be 0, it may be 10, I don't know. But at least we had an idea coming in. Part of the reason is that our commission is allowed to receive complaints, but there are actually, I think, about 7 different ways that someone can file a complaint. It can be through the website, it can be by email, it could be direct through our commission. There's a whole variety of ways. So having that kind of information might be helpful for our commission. And I think we've lost someone here, so we can't vote on anything.
No.
I haven't chimed in yet. I'll just say I appreciate both of your comments and so, oh.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. Would we like to take a short 5-minute
There
break?
you go. Great.
Or 3 minutes, however long it takes. Thank you, Mr. Ellman. We're back here. We took a small break while you were gone.
So I'd like to make a recommendation to kind of focus our conversation is, and this is going with what Commissioner Ellman was just asking about. Given the agenda items that we've covered in the past 9 months, what goals do we have for, what specific goals could we name for the commission? Are there specific goals that we could name for the commission right now? One of the recommendations I would have is trying to set an annual calendar where we're covering so many different subjects that we may want to calendar them throughout the year so we kind of know upcoming what we're preparing for. Because right now we've been kind of like flying by the seat of our pants with agendizing items as they meet our fancy. But I'm wondering if we want to consider calendaring items, and 2, identifying specific general topics that we may want to focus in on.
I think it's a good idea. My suggestion for one of the is traffic enforcement. We're still, dealing with the effects of the Glen Oaks situation, so I think we need to continue to follow through on that.
I think, Commissioner Coombs, you're looking for, rather than individual items to add, you're looking more as a policy for us in what are we doing? Do we want to create recommendations specifically towards police policy, or to give to the council for police policy, or I see some of the things where they do seem a little bit odd where they jump up from different areas, but that is also giving education to us as well as the public about what goes on. And the police presentations are fantastic in giving a lot more detail to explain what their duties are and what needs and accomplishments that they have gone through. So I think what we're looking for is really specifically, how do we want to operate as far in the future, I think, from you? How do we want to operate as far as specific goals, not individual categories, but overall, that we're looking to focus any question that we raise, anything that comes in, we're looking at it because we want to either propose a policy change or just kind of disregard it, I guess, basically, if there's nothing to be changed on it. We've done our research on it.
I think there's room to get a little bit more specific than that. I think we could, for example, if we wanted to identify that at least on an annual basis, we wanted to dedicate some time to traffic enforcement. Again, it's not a traffic safety issue, it's a traffic enforcement, because we can focus on law enforcement related issues, but we can't focus on traffic control related issues. Did I get that right? From I'm teachable. So identifying traffic enforcement is a theme that we may want to make sure that we're touching on at least once a year. Another one that we may want to focus on is education and training of officers, looking at education and training standards. Another one that we touched briefly on earlier, had a presentation on it, especially in light of the national narrative over the past few years, is anti-racism, diversity, and inclusion. And what role does that play in the department? So I think it may be safe to identify a calendar with themes throughout the year, but it also doesn't preclude us from addressing specific issues using the process of motions for the agenda, motioning an item. So there may be a both and here. We can identify general themes throughout the year. We can plan for that. We can do our research and do our homework on it before we have those discussions. We can develop thoughtful questions in advance that we could actually give to the department prior to a presentation. One of the concerns that I did hear previously was that the department does provide some great presentations, but they have the autonomy to go wherever they want with that topic or that presentation, and they may actually benefit from our in advance developing some specific questions that we would like addressed. So I think we can calendar things in that sense, but I also believe that it will also have the flexibility to add topical items as they come up and we see fit. So I guess, am I making a motion that we develop an annual calendar of activities and what's the best word for that? Topics or topical areas. I don't know what the right word would be, but the motion would be that we develop a calendar of activities and topics annually for the commission to address throughout the year.
Just don't fully understand how that is different than our agenda for the future. I mean, it's kind of like they sound like they'd be listing the same subjects.
It could be, but we're actually setting when we want to have these discussions and preparing for them in advance. Right now, we have topics for the future, and that future could be 2 months from now. That future could be 2 years from now. We haven't identified that.
Well, a lot of it is also the scheduling with the department, that the people will have the presentations available at a certain date, and the people needed for the presentation will be available. So there's some logistics involved.
This would be a question then for the department. Is it fair to say if we identified, for example, we wanted to designate, for example, this is May. May is Mental Health Month. So we may end up focusing on alternative policing strategies in the community every May. And if we put that on a calendar, is it safe to set that on a calendar with the expectation that the department would be able to present on that at that time, or do they need more time for that? It's actually a question to the department and a question to the commissioner about how much lead time, how much advance time do we need to provide for any particular topic that we'd like to address?
So throughout the year, there's Mental Health Month, domestic violence, traffic safety, So we know that in advance, and if we wanted to overlap that, so that is a theme for that month, so like Mental Health Awareness Month. This also happens to be the 10th anniversary of our Med team. And next year, I would throw out there is that let's maybe look at some other mental health team models to see what they look like, or even get one of our agency partners, Glendale, Pasadena, how they work to kind of stimulate the thought for you folks and our folks. So that is all doable. And I think Ms. Nakamura could help us out there as far as the month where there's a theme in nexus to law enforcement or public service.
Right.
And I think that's very doable.
Okay.
Commissioner Fruzen, did you have any thoughts there you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think calendaring makes sense and tying it in with, if there is already a theme to the month and potentially, being able to tie in with other activities that the department is doing in relation to that. As long as, and I think this is what you're saying, there's still the option to add agenda items as they come up to be responsive to things going on in the community and that we're hearing from folks, because I think, yes, it has been maybe a little bit more spontaneous, the agenda items, but I think at least a large part of that is because those are kind of the concerns and questions that we hear bubbling up from the community, whether that's relating to one particular incident or kind of a spate of incidents that have been going on. So just making room for that as well.
One thing I would like to see put on the annual calendar is every year there's a presentation from the Office of Independent Review, and they make recommendations to the department. I would really like to see after 6 months after the recommendations, 9 months after the recommendations, where the department is in terms of meeting or those recommendations that came from the Office of Independent Review.
So, Mr. Chair, there's actually a motion on the table by Vice Chair Coombs, and so I know we're having some discussion. I'm not sure if we're still in the discussion phase or I'm not sure where we are, because it sounds like Commissioner Elman has suggestions for the calendar, which we have not yet voted on.
I was, yeah.
I haven't heard.
I was just going to.
Yeah, there was no
Motion
second.
seconded?
There was no second yet. So there's a motion on the table, and we need a second, and we need a vote. And then we can have further discussion about, the things that you might want this calendar to look like.
Would you like to restate your motion?
Sure.
Just to,
I'd like to motion that the Police Commission move forward with developing an annual calendar, identifying general themes, which will also allow the ongoing agendizing of timely issues as well.
and do we have a second?
I second.
Okay. Now we are open for discussion on that specific motion.
Got it.
Sounds good to me.
I would just, and this is relating to Ms. O's comment, just if, I think, given that we're missing a few commission members tonight, that maybe we vote on whether or not to do, to have the calendar, but not necessarily discuss what would be on the calendar or formulate the calendar tonight, just because we're missing some folks.
Makes sense. And still fits with the motion, so, yeah.
I'm not sure I understood that, just to be sure. You want to table this until?
No,
No, I'm just
All
saying,
people?
I think we should take the vote. I seconded the motion to
Good.
vote on
Okay.
whether to have the
Okay.
calendar, just
All right.
that we table the discussion about what the calendar will look like and what issues until we have more of the full
Okay.
commission here,
Okay.
that's all.
All right,
To the specifics.
good, thank you.
Yeah.
Do we have any other discussion?
Is it just on the motion, or are we through with it, with this agenda?
Just on his emotion,
Okay.
just on his
Okay.
motion. All right, then, anything else? Okay, then we take a vote by hand. Sherry, would you like to count?
Because we're meeting in person, it's okay by hand.
Okay, all in favor? Good, excellent, unanimous. All right,
And I think it'd be a good idea if we could go back to the evaluation, or the self-evaluation. I think that's where you wanted to go, Commissioner? No? Okay.
No, I wanted to go with the presentation of the review of the city charter and the charge to the police commission. Number 3. Oh. Sorry about that. I like to, can you explain to me number 3, what that is? If it's something that exists today, or is that a recommendation for the future?
I think,
I'm not sure exactly who put it on there, but there was a discussion, the original discussion of having if we should contact the Charter Review Committee, and if there was any changes that would be involved in there. That issue has been resolved. But the discussion recommendations, if anything else, I would think that would be possibly a topic that could be added to the calendar at some point.
just for clarification, we're looking at the document, the memo that was sent out, the self-evaluation, and specifically, we're looking at item number 3 in 3A3? Or,
I'm sorry, I was going off number 3
Yeah.
Yeah, I
off
was
of
just gonna
our
ask for-
agenda.
are you
For
looking at
clarification.
E3, powers and duties of the commission?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Further in making appointments to the council shall.
Okay, so A3.
That's actually a section, so A3,
Yeah.
which is on page,
It's on the first page of the draft report.
yeah, around the composition of the commission, yes? Is that-
Where I get confused is I can look at item 1 and see that's something that exists today. And number 2, I believe, exists today, and I'm just wondering if number 3, is that existing today, or is that a recommendation?
Yes, it's existing.
Yeah.
Yes. And I actually have a suggestion for that section. So if we want to discuss that piece, I have a suggestion to make a, if everyone's in agreement, to recommend. So I appreciate that, which was a new addition to, I believe, that didn't used to exist in years past, that recommendation or considerations to take into account. And I think I just would, there's one more consideration I think that we should add, and I will say it also is recommended in the LA County redefining policing report that was published a few years ago.
So,
by-
Mr. Chair, if I can, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure that everybody understands. I believe Commissioner, the subcommittee here literally restated what's in our charter on page 1 of the draft report, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So the charter is, to change the charter, takes a vote of the citizens of the city of Burbank. This is not something that you can make recommendations and change because it's the charter. And the charter can only be changed by a vote of the people during an election, which is why the Charter Review Committee is looking at any proposed changes to the charter right now. Again, my understanding of what happened at the meeting, the Charter Review meeting that the chair and vice chair went to, is that the Charter Review Committee stated that they did not see any need to change the police commission section of the charter. So I believe their recommendation to council would be to leave everything as is. So you can make a recommendation to go back to the Charter Review Committee to suggest a change that then the Charter Review Committee would make to the city council, but you as a body can't make recommendations and vote and then change what's here.
Right, and I actually,
Okay.
that's a question I have here, is that this says from the city charter, but I was under the impression that that section actually, that additional, and maybe it's in 2 places, but I was under the impression that that piece around considerations for candidates' experience was also in the municipal code, and that is something that council votes on?
Yes, changes
council
to the
determines
municipal code.
So I just
Correct.
wanted to clarify, is this really from the charter or is this piece from the municipal code? Because I may have been,
Yeah,
I've
this,
gotten the two confused.
this,
but I-
this piece is from the charter, and you're actually bringing up a really good point.
Charter, just
Just to make sure, I don't have the actual charter document in front of me, but when this document was put together back in January, it was section 2.1.413. And if somebody else has a copy of the actual charter in front of them, we might be able to look that up.
2.4.
This is under the Police Commission, item 2-1-413. And now I'm curious as to whether I've got this from the commission or from the municipal code, or from the charter or from the municipal code. Police Commission. So section 705, okay.
So the commission's
So this is-
established in the charter,
Gotcha.
right here, 705, but
Yeah.
I'm just not sure that the section around, this
It may be.
actual text is from the city charter.
You can
My
at page
understanding
It may
25.
be.
Yeah. Was
Yeah.
that was actually
And
in the
what's-
municipal code.
what's
Because
in the-
I'm remembering the process of before I was on the commission, that the previous commission was tasked with creating recommendations around the police commission,
Right.
to give to city council, and I participated in that process, and this was one of the things that I remember advocating for, and so I don't think that was something that the whole, city voted on.
I'm not familiar with that,
but
being
I
in
could be
the
wrong.
commission, and I was on charter review the last time it was changed, and I don't remember.
So,
Yeah, I would like to find that, where
Yeah.
exactly it is in the code.
And I'm looking at different dates as well. I'm wondering if this actually came from the city code.
Yeah, that's what I think so.
And if it came from the city code, it's a different discussion. It's not talking about the charter, it's talking about the
Right,
city
which is
code.
why at the last meeting I requested to update this agenda item to city charter and municipal code, because I had this
Gotcha.
in mind. So I think,
And the document that I pulled it from was last updated. the
Yeah,
document was
I
last
just
updated
looked at
January
it, just
2022.
overview of the city charter, and I'm going,
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with this being in the charter.
I
Yeah,
think it's from the,
okay.
yeah.
So with that, if the current piece is, and again, I don't have it right in front of me with the, with the current code, if the current piece is from the current code, which was
Right.
determined by the city
By
council.
Right.
So we're not necessarily, for example, the charter that we were just looking at, that you had was
It
from
wouldn't,
2008.
it wouldn't impact that.
Right.
But,
So,
but the two pieces work together. So
And
that's
the-
why I thought if we're going to
Right.
discuss one, we should sort of
And
look at them
that is
together.
actually, the city has the ability, the city council has the ability, has the authority to give us additional duties as assigned.
Right.
So that's where we may want to have the conversation, because as Ms. O brought up, we can make recommendations to the Charter Commission, and that's kind of what we were asked to do last week, but declined to do that because of the conversation that we're having this evening.
Right.
And we couldn't speak on behalf of the entire Police Commission.
Right.
And one of the pieces that was raised last week by, as Ms. O was bringing up, is that the city council currently does have the authority to assign us additional duties or responsibilities as they see fit, which would then show up in the
Right.
document that I've got mislabeled here.
Don't worry. Yeah, so I think if there are discussions around that too, I think I'll just say for me, just speaking to this charter question versus the additional, responsibilities or powers, I think that I do agree with Ms. O's assessment that the language in the charter is very broad and does provide a lot of opportunity to do a lot of things that I don't think, and maybe some of those things we didn't, need to do in the last however many months. We've been at this, and that's fine, but I think we haven't really fulfilled the potential of all those things. So I think, for me, I don't see going beyond what's, already in the charter in terms of powers at this time being something that we should pursue, or that I don't believe that's something we should pursue, but I do have a suggestion around that point number 3, which is around the considerations that council should look at when appointing people to this commission. So I don't know if I can share that and then
Yeah, go ahead.
see what you all think. So I think, again, it's very simple. It's a small change, small addition. But I think, and again, it is recommended in the LA County Redefining Policing report that was published a few years ago by the LA County Human Rights Commission, or Human Relations Commission, sorry. And also just something that I think, beyond that, is kind of considered a best practice. And so I would just say to add the consideration for someone who personally, whether that's themselves or their family, has been involved in or impacted by the criminal justice system. So that would just be one addition there, just to specifically call that out as something that's important, and I think would be a worthy addition. Again, none of these are requirements, but it would be something to take into account. So, anybody have thoughts on that?
Any
I don't.
response here?
I don't see a problem with it. I don't know if there's a need to make that a business item. The reason for the council, because in my field and in the work that I do, it does have social work and care work that would involve reentry services and two different things. I'm looking at the experience, interest in, and knowledge of. So that's really broad. In the work that I do, we are actively hiring people that have lived mental health experience and lived experience receiving services. When I read item number 3, I kind of read that in. So that's just my own lens in terms of what's included there. But if there's a need to be more specific and have the council specifically do outreach looking for folks who have experience in the criminal justice system, in interacting with law enforcement as a, what's the word, a subject, a consumer, a
Subject matter expert?
no, not a subject matter expert, but somebody who, for
Somebody
example,
impacted.
somebody who's been impacted.
I think in this paragraph, it does call out a lot of important experience, whether that's professional, personal. But I think that all of these that I'm looking at are actually more professional experience versus a lived experience. And I think that's a little bit of a different lens. And I think maybe at least some people wouldn't come to mind with that group of folks just reading this list, and then the sort of vague other related experience. But I could be wrong.
Where are we going here? We've got our motion from earlier. Is there anything that we want to add as far as another motion or change or to anything? Or
I would put a motion to make an official recommendation from the commission to city council to add this additional language to that section of the municipal code. That would be, I'm not making that motion, but that's kind of why I'm raising
Okay.
this as a discussion item. Yes.
I can't support it until I see it in the municipal code and where it's placed in the municipal code. Because it's way out. I mean, we're the police commission, and the title of this thing is Review of the City Charter, and they changed to the police commission. So I would really like to see the actual municipal code, and then it'd be easier for me to vote to add something or not, but not seeing it, it's hard for me to vote on.
I think what's here on this page here, so where it starts, where it says here from the city charter updated January 2022, that actually should say municipal code.
Correct.
So everything that follows under there, starting from A, composition of commission, that is the section of the municipal code that speaks to the police commission. I think that's,
So I'm hesitant to make a motion or support a motion on that right now for slightly different reason. We're going to have an upcoming meeting with the city council, and there's an annual meeting that takes place. I don't know if it's been calendared yet, but there's going to be opportunity both as a commission to engage the city council, and there's also individual opportunity if any of us wanted to consult with our liaisons with the city council as well. What my concern is, and I've in watching some of the city council meetings and how late they go in these chambers and everything, I'm hesitant to put anything before them that is not a significant change or would point us in a significant direction at this time. Item number 3 really reads to me as a spirit of what they're looking for, and I think they have the ability to do that without it being some sort of a mandate or a rule or anything like that. So that's the reason I wouldn't want to support a motion to give a task or a recommendation to the city council to consider it, because I think this is a discussion that could be had offline or individually with our liaisons or during the joint meeting.
I suspect, and maybe you could confirm that, is that joint meeting also a OIR response?
It is, and that's part of my report out, but I'll report it out now. It'll be July 26th. So we will be, the police commission will be in an observing role, because OIR will have the lead. I mean, it's a joint session, so that's the wrong word or descriptor. But that joint session is the report out of OIR. So they will take questions not only from the city council, but also the police commission. So the typical agenda items and the format and all of that will be deferred till the August session. So the July 26th will be our July police commission session. That will be a long night.
Michelle?
So in light of the fact that we are going to have this OIR report, and they will have recommendations in their report as well, I think there's real value in what you're doing here, and maybe what you can do as a body is have these discussions leading up to that first the July joint meeting, and then the August meeting, where then you can collectively put together all the recommendations that you've discussed over these months, along with the OIR recommendations, and then you'll have a better complete picture, so you can go to council at one time with all of your recommendations and the rationale behind them together as a package, as opposed to one item at a time, which goes to Commissioner Coombs' concern.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and I don't necessarily, I guess my question is, do we, to your point that there may be a lot of these items and they may be broad ranging, this is municipal code, there may be something else about something completely different, and so in terms of the process, is it something, where we sort of build this list as we go, and then in August we sort of really vote on a whole package of things, or are we voting on this piece, okay, and that's added to the list of recommendations that we are sort of building up over this period of time, or are we just voting once in August and just sort of collecting a list, so anyone,
Right. So it really depends on how you as a commission want to do it. It makes sense to me that you, along with the motion that you already passed, which is to put together a calendar of issues that you want to bring forward, looking a year in advance. To me, that makes sense. It's like when you are giving directions, right? Driving a car. Like, I like to be told, okay, 2 miles down the road, you're going to make a left turn. It helps me prepare. And I think that goes to the spirit of our earlier conversation. Like, we have all these agenda items, but it's a little bit all over the place as to the different topics that come before you. And so having a calendar gives you that opportunity to plan ahead. And so in conjunction with that calendar of things that you want to plan ahead and issues you want to look at, having discussions, where are we? We're May, in June, but like between now and then, right? We're going to have another meeting before, right? Yeah, we're going to have June, and then you're going to have your joint meeting. So it gives you opportunity to continue this discussion. So Commissioner Feruzin, you've identified something that you want to bring forth to the commission to vote on as a body. I anticipate that in June, you may have more, right? The commission as a body may have additional things you want to look at as potentially changing either let's just say the code, right? And obviously, whatever changes we make to the code can't be contradictory to what's in the charter.
Yeah.
But I anticipate that you might find more things that you want to make suggestions to council, recommendations to council on. And so rather than doing it like a trickle, it makes sense to package everything together. It utilizes your opportunity with council in the best way.
I guess my question is not as much as, because I agree, it doesn't make sense to bring one item, each week, something else, but in terms of our process, so if we have these different topics that we want to discuss that are all going to potentially result in recommendations for council for August, for example, does it make sense for us to, we have this item now, vote on that now, and doesn't mean that we're instantly now sending that to council. We're holding it until August, and then in June we have a conversation around some other items, I mean,
So
it's not a very
procedurally.
long list of items, but I'm just, supposing that there could be 20 items, maybe we don't have time in one meeting to get through all of them, so is it just kind of,
Well, I don't think you're
You know.
voting on anything tonight. You've raised an issue, and the way I envision it will go is that as you have tonight's discussion, we can re-agendize it so you can have further discussion next month, and then we, staff, right, can create the list of things that we discussed, and then you will have your joint meeting and hear what OIR has to say, and then in the August meeting, you will have a list of all the things that were discussed in the prior months, and then you can have your discussion and then collectively vote on what you're going to actually recommend. So,
okay, so voting
is
on
that-
all the items would happen at once versus,
I mean, that makes sense to me. We're taking notes about the discussion, and so you haven't actually made a motion,
Right,
Commi-
yeah.
right, Commissioner Fruzen? You just want to have the discussion, and so we will we'll continue our discussion now. We can similarly put it on the agenda to have further discussion next month, and then again we'll have the July joint, and then in August you can revisit all of these things and decide which ones you actually want to recommend, vote on it, and then that will be the actual recommendation that goes to council.
Bless you for taking those
Okay.
notes. I do have actually a motion to just clarify and resolve something that's been floating, we've been going back and forth on, and I'd like to make the motion that we are accepting the charge to the police commission in the charter as written for this commission, this charter review cycle. So in other words, I'd like to make the motion that we're not making any recommendations for changes to the charter
That's
for
correct.
this cycle.
Excellent. Do we need a second here? You have a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Elman seconds? Is there any discussion?
Please no.
All those in favor, raise your hand. Good.
Great.
That's unanimous.
I think that'll help them out as well.
That closes that out. I wonder if we could incorporate the calendar with our introduction of agenda items and continually include those at the bottom of our agendas so that we have a future forecast of what's going on.
We could. Commissioner Farouzen said earlier, though, that we were just agreeing on creating a calendar, but not necessarily defining the items tonight. So I don't think that that's something that we necessarily need to do this evening.
No, nothing is locked in. What this is doing, this is our proposed items for the future. It doesn't have a specific, and we can actually drop them at any time if we don't want to.
Which I do
So
have.
I just to keep them in mind of where we are and in a consistent way, then we just include it at the end of the agenda there.
Sure.
That would be good. Do we have a second to that? Do we need administrative kind of stuff? Do we need a vote on it?
No.
Good, okay.
I
Good.
would, Mr. Chair, I would like to ask a clarification question. As to your agenda item number 1, which is the draft report that's prepared by the Self-Evaluation Subcommittee, who is the draft report for? Who's the intended audience?
It's for the commission. So it
For-
was preparation for this discussion. So I got a chance to review it, already share it. There was limited, we identified the range of the items that we had discussed, but there was really no discussion or recommendations based on that, whether it's inclusive, if there's any items that were missing. And so I took the lack of feedback as this is what we've done.
Okay. So it is you're right. We haven't actually discussed the report itself, which is part of the agendized item. Is there any other discussion or recommendations on the actual draft report itself?
I did hear one recommendation that we correct the label of the charter to the municipal code. Thank you.
Is there anything that Commissioner Romack would
He was involved in helping develop this, so I think his thoughts and my thoughts are included here already.
I think it's, I think it's accurate to what we've done, and I think, just in terms of the recommendation, we already voted on the issue of the calendar, and I think in terms of areas for growth, I think both, collaboration with city council and increased public participation would be two things that or maybe just, more sustained collaboration with city council, I think would be
Ms.
two key
Ms. O,
items.
could you maybe clarify something? You were asking who the audience was. Should we, at this time, approve the report or accept the report and then file the report, or decide if we're going to send it to someone, like the council or something like that?
Well, unless you actually have a desire to send it to, for example, unless you actually want to send it to our council liaison or council, you can just note and file this.
Okay.
So it's agendized so that you can provide feedback to the subcommittee as to, when I read the agenda item, I understood it to be feedback to the subcommittee about the substance, the format of the report, everything, right? So that you can finalize it and note and file it, or vote tonight to send it to somebody, right? The liaison or the council. So the answer to your question, Mr. Chair, is whatever the commission wants to do at this point with this report. If you want to accept it with the one change that was recommended earlier, or if you have suggestions on things to add, things to take away, and then ultimately what you want to do with it, or if you just want to note and file it so that we have it for future discussions, it's at the pleasure of the commission.
I think the commissioners working on this did an excellent job at collecting the information and putting it in order. And what I'd like to do at this time is perhaps note and file it, if that would be good. Mr. Elman, did you have a?
I was going to make a motion to note and file, but I'll
Excellent.
let you do it, and I will second it.
Excellent, that would be perfect. And is there any discussion about that? All right. We can all vote by hand? Those in favor? Excellent, we got it unanimous.
Great.
I think, and thank you. Commissioner Abakovian did a great job and appreciate it, and our whole group does. Moving on is our discussion about participating in Nicole. And do you have something to share about that, or?
No, it's, the commission will select, and I just will share with the commission is that we have the funds, because it comes out of our budget, the police budget, to underwrite 2 commissioners to go, what I'm calling on duty. So I'll defer to you folks as far as who is going to, who has an interest in going.
Just for the record, Commissioner Liu was not interested in going, and Commissioner Hagobian said he would be interested in participating.
Good, good. Commissioner Peruzin, do you have any interest in attending?
I think I attended some of the online sessions last year, and I found those very interesting and informative. In terms of attending the conference in person, I think that might be a little challenging for me, just with the work and small children.
Okay.
But if there are, other folks who, if no one can attend, I can potentially maybe be able to attend part of it, but I don't think I'd be able to attend for a week. So if there's
All right.
other folks
I think
who,
it's actually, was it 4 days,
4 days, 5 days. It
3.5
says 11th
days,
through
yeah.
15th, so I don't know
I can
if
only-
that's all.
I can only tell you from my personal experience that it starts on a Sunday night and it goes through Thursday, and then I think it's over.
So with my experience, some of the law enforcement adjacent work that I've been involved in, and I'm going to be participating in the upcoming Citizen Academy for the department. I'm more than willing to defer to allow somebody else to have this experience at this time, if it would benefit.
It sounds like we have one taker this year. I have a question. If we do not use both of the options,
Does not carry over.
we can't give that to one of our officers to attend?
Oh, we could, but the money doesn't carry over, and I apologize because I was anticipating a question. But if I can have Ms. Nakamura see if there is some online opportunities where you're some flexibility, that unused money could be used for maybe 2 or 3 online. So
Okay.
if we can you let us research that? And Ms. Nakamura will email all and share with you on that. Because I've been
Great.
getting the online stuff, and that may be a better fit for folks that are working.
Great. I think that will work out perfect. So we have one commissioner who is planning to attend. That's Mr. Hakobian. Yeah.
And Mr. Chair, just so you know, the attendee generally comes back and provides a report of the things that they learned and participated in during this NACOL session. So I'm sure Commissioner Hakobian is aware of this and welcomes the opportunity.
I think so too. I think it'd be an excellent choice to go there.
So he's the selection, correct?
Just the one, yeah.
Okay.
And I think that we're going to probably be involved in the online.
I would say
suggestions.
just with the understanding that if Commissioner Turner wanted to attend, I don't think we have heard from her. So if she would like to attend in person, then I for one, would support sending her versus.
I think you've got the general announcements, and then we've got introduction of agenda items for future meetings.
Yeah. Chief?
I will be brief. This is just to advise the commission and the community that we're holding presently some procedural justice training. Actually, half the training is occurred today. It continues to tomorrow. This is part of the Why'd You Stop Me training. These are 4 blocks that are specific to sworn personnel. But there's an additional component where the community, there's community dialogue sessions, and those sessions will be held in June and August. So for commissioners, we'll make sure that there's an email blast on that. For the community members, we will have social media posting by Sergeant Feckerty and/or on our website so that we will get that information out there. Go ahead.
Good question for Ms. O. Is there a problem with having more than 3 commissioners attend those sessions in the community?
Generally, Brown Act commission members can attend if the event is also agendized as a Brown Act event, or if it's general. So there are some exceptions to the rule that you can't have, a quorum of you attend some things. So depending on what it is, how it's set up, how it's advertised, and their procedures, you might be able to. I would have to look further into it.
Thank you.
Continuing and this is just to repeat or to refresh, the joint City Council Police Commission meeting is going to be on Tuesday, July 26th, and that meeting will be in lieu of the regularly scheduled Police Commission meeting. So some upcoming events, and this is going to speak to what you asked, Ms. O, is that we have our Community Academy that starts June 2nd. This is a big deal for us because we had a 2-year hiatus because of COVID. We actually have nearly 50 folks that have an interest in participating. to include 3 police commissioners, which is great. But we cannot have any more police commissioners. So this is a great start. We have 3 of the 7, and I think, Michael, you're one of them, and James and Romick. So thank you for your participation in that. But for the community, it starts June 2nd. Our youth academy will start sometime in July. Typically, that's done during the summer. There's events associated with that the department collaborates with some of our youth programs. And then National Night Out, you'll recall we had that last year. This year it'll be August 2nd. And I believe last year it was August 3rd or 4th. So those are the only updates I have, and I will hand off back to Chair Chapman.
Thank you, Chief. We have items pending. Is there anything that we need to add at this time, or?
I actually have an item that I had motioned to add to the agenda that I'd actually like to withdraw. I don't think there's a need to pursue it at this time, and it's really not, I don't think it's really the focus of where we should be at as a commission. I'd like to withdraw the proposal to the Burbank Police Department, City Council, and I don't know what CM stands for? City Manager, thank you, to eliminate the no-knock warrants. Very, very satisfied with the previous presentation that was given and the discussion, and don't think it is a good use of our time as a commission to continue to pursue that.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Is there a need to second if it was a motion that I had originally made, or? Okay.
You'll second it? Commissioner Ellman?
Yes, I will.
Any discussion? Those in favor? Aye. Okay, that drops off of the list, Ms. Nakamura.
I'm wondering, Commissioner Coombs, if you have any agenda items to add around the self-evaluation, like discussing calendar items or other, the goals that, setting other specific
Right.
goals
So-
or anything.
So we had voted tonight on establishing an annual calendar. Is there a need to agendize? That's going to be part of our business process now moving forward. So is there a need to agendize discussion of the calendar?
Not,
Well, I think what we decided to do was integrate that with our agenda items, and so it'd be the same role together.
That was my understanding.
so you voted to have a calendar with theme months, if you will. But my recollection is the discussion of what you're populating into the months is on hold until we have more members join us. So we can put that on the agenda, assuming that we're going to have our full commission to discuss.
I'm not sure that would change anything. It's just the calendar.
This
is
would be
gonna-
just like a one-time discussion of January would be this, February this, March that,
Yeah, and-
versus it's not adding, it's creating the calendar.
Right. And
Which is a one-time, to the agenda.
Okay.
And then
And
that, and
I think some of that work can be done outside of the commission meetings to bring them to the commission to make a motion to introduce a calendar that's already laid out.
yeah, there could be that too. I just thought if we want to put it on this list of agenda items, that way it's ready to be discussed, I guess, then, even if it's formulated in a subcommittee.
So that there's no confusion. I think the confusion's coming because we're calling the calendar, and we're also calling items that we may actually put on the calendar. And so it might be a little confusing, Mr. Chair, but you voted tonight to actually have a calendar. A business calendar that's going to set out a year's worth of topics that we think are important and laying it out so that we have some forewarning of what's coming. But you didn't discuss what's going to go actually on the calendar for any particular month. So what I anticipate is next meeting, staff will bring back information about topics that are, usually held on that month. As the chief talked about, Mental Health Awareness Month, Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Communications operators, and there's a boatload. In fact, that's why I apologize. That's why I asked Sergeant Feckety. There's a boatload of them, so it would be a menu, and then you'll be able to pick and choose, but at least you know what is being recognized and highlighted for that month on the law enforcement to include non-sworn activities.
So in that case, does it make sense for there to be a subcommittee that receives that list and then formulates a draft and then brings it back to the full council? Is that what you're sort of
I'd like to actually
envisioning,
take
or-
it a step forward and have a subcommittee that's going to meet between now and the next meeting to be able to work with Sergeant Feckety to bring a calendar to the table that we can agendize the discussion of the proposed calendar and then vote to accept that calendar at the next meeting if possible. So I guess I need to make a motion on that then. So I motion that we, in addition to establishing a calendar, that we populate that calendar, do we motion to have a subcommittee? I don't know if we need to do that.
So I'm actually rereading the agenda because I want to make sure that we could take a vote on that in the first place. If the agenda item is broad enough that we can take action, huh?
There's already a subcommittee who came up with this, so shouldn't they have the same subcommittee?
How about, can the chair decide if we have a subcommittee or not?
No, but that's taking action. And so,
What's that?
but that's taking action, so I need to make sure that the item is agendized broadly enough that the action you're taking falls within the agenda item. So to Ms. Nakamura's point, I think under item 1, I'm going to just make a legal call and say that it's broad enough that I think if you wanted to create a subcommittee to talk, because it's related to the evaluation of the performance of the commission, to discuss the calendar items, you can go ahead and do that. So the question is, do you want to keep the same subcommittee that created the draft report, or you can vote now to create a new subcommittee?
So I'm motioning that we create a subcommittee to establish a annual calendar, and that subcommittee consists of 3 commissioners and with the participation of Sergeant Feckety.
Excellent. Do we have a second?
I second that.
Any discussion?
I won't be supporting it. I think the calendar is a very strong tool, and I think that basically every member of the commission should have equal access to it and equal input, and I think that information will be shared, but it's shared at a later time, and you come in at the end of a process, and a lot of times there's no stopping that process, so I can't support this.
So I will withdraw my motion, and I'd like to make a new motion that we agendize an item for the next meeting to have a discussion as the commission of the whole to establish an annual calendar.
Do we have a second?
Just to clarify, so are you motioning to undo the vote we took earlier?
No.
He was withdrawing the
You're
first.
just
Withdrawing my first
withdrawing the
motion.
motion.
Yeah, the
withdrawing
motion I just made.
The one you just made around getting
Around
to the
the subcommittee.
specifics of the, yeah.
Yes, so instead of having a subcommittee, I'm motioning that we agendize for our next meeting
And as a
to have
council
a
review.
conversation with the whole commission to establish the annual calendar.
Okay. Okay.
Would that work well with you, Mr. Ellman?
Oh, I'm happy.
Would you like to second that?
No, the motion I just made to have a discussion as a whole commission to establish that calendar.
Yeah, I will second it.
Good. Any discussion? Okay, those in favor? Aye. Aye. Unanimous, that will be on our agenda for next month then. And I believe that's all we got. So I am going to adjourn this meeting and thank everybody and have a good evening.
Thank you.